welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who is closing nearly $60 million a year while working 35 hours a week and taking 6 vacations. That's mortgage nirvana, folks. And then he walked away from it all because he felt called to do something he could not ignore, helping loan officers stop chasing success and start living with significance. Michael Decker, welcome to the Lowdown.
My man, Connor, what is up, brother? So good to be on the call, man.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm excited to have you on here. We go way back, like our paths intersected like 9-10 years ago, something like that. And so this is kind of a cool moment to have you on the podcast and chop it up a little bit. But before we really dive into everything, why don't you share a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, man. I think the greatest story always begins with the genesis, right? And so actually, I stepped in the mortgage coming out of a 2008, 2009 pretty broken market, right? It's pretty interesting. I didn't graduate from college. I had the school of hard knocks, right? So I learned a lot just through the companies I work for. And I actually work for Wells Fargo Financial. And one day I'm the branch manager. I'm sitting in the back and there's all this exciting, we're having this huge corporate meeting. And I'm sitting back there and I'm on the phone and all my people were in front of me, right? And that was back in the smile and dial days. And they announced that they're closing down Wells Fargo Financial and absorbing into the bank. And if you're not in a banking market, then you don't have a job or you can go work for home mortgage. So I was like, well, I've been through this once, right? And so that's how I got started in mortgage though. But what I realized is I needed to work in a place that understood me just as much as I understood them. And so my journey started off with a big, massive retail company, but I realized that really didn't fit who I was and how I was equipped in order to help kind of expand what I wanted to do in the mortgage space. But that's kind of how I got started in things. And from there, I was an originator in my last year. I think you opened up with it, but man, I loved serving people. I loved partnering with referral partners. And I did it in a small community, Stillwater, Oklahoma. And in my last year of actually being in production, me, a loan partner 1, a loan partner 2, and a loan partner 3 processor, right, closed right around $60 million in production. And like you said, in that year, I literally took 6 vacations. And when I say I took a vacation, that means no laptop access, no responding to text messages, no jumping on calls, being very dedicated with being on vacation. And I would say during that year, my team probably worked 41 to 42 hours a week. It wasn't like they were overloaded working 50, 60. But like you said, got called into something different. Really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I want to highlight something real quick because $60 million in Stillwater, Oklahoma is not the same as $60 million in San Diego, California, or some other large market. What's the average loan amount in Stillwater?
Hey, man, when I first got in the business, I was at 118,000, right? Because that's all I could get. But over the years, it continued to grow. And in my last year production, we averaged right around 280,000. So,
yeah, that's impressive though. To get to 60 million at 280, that's a lot of loans. That's 200 units almost, right? Something like that.
We were cooking for sure.
That's phenomenal, man. Well, you go through that and there's a process that you go through to build. And when we were talking kind of leading up to recording this podcast, you had mentioned to me just kind of a vulnerable moment where just behind closed doors between you and your wife, she says, "Hey, Michael, if something doesn't change, we're going to have to change." And I know that had to hit you hard. So what did success cost you before you figured out what significance really meant? Because I love how you're leaning into that.
Yeah. So, man, I remember that young man and I remember just his heart for what he was doing. But my idea of just performing and at all cost, right? And it was always this message of, but I'm doing it for my family, right? I'm going out, I'm earning a high income. And what most people don't know is I went through a financial bankruptcy. I literally lost it all. And when I got started back in mortgage, I was really under the gun of figuring out how to become the person I wanted to be. And I thought making money was that. And so, man, I would work 60 hours a week, sometimes 70 hours a week, right? I would get up and grind before everyone else. And then on the weekends and on the weeknights, I'd be at dinner and I'd be like, hey, family, calm down. can't be loud. I got a phone call I have to take. And after just consistent time and time again of really, I would say I showed up for my family, but I had no emotional connection. I wasn't doing date nights with my wife. I wasn't understanding what her needs and her desires was. I thought if I could earn more money, then I could give her all the things she wanted. But unfortunately, that's not how she was wired. And you're right. She looked at me and she's like, listen, if something doesn't change, like I can't live like this. And I hope you realize that you can't live like this. Right. And I think she may have worded it something like, you're not healthy. And man, I'm a fit guy, right? Like I work out, I exercise, I'm dedicated to my diet, but not being healthy really helped me understand that, if I continue to do this success thing, because honest, Connor, we were taking vacations, we had zeros in the bank account, like, and they lined up, right? Driving nice cars, living in nice homes and that type of stuff. But man, I was on the inside a very empty man, right? And that emptiness started to grow into my marriage, into who I was raising as kids. And man, that was an opener for me. Like, if I don't figure something out, like, I'm not going to have the people I care for. And why do all this if I don't have them?
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because I know there's a lot of people that struggle with something very similar. And keep their head down thinking work will solve it, right? Just
Mm.
get more wins on the board and everything will be just fine. Production cures everything. And
Yeah. And
it's
I
a very
think,
dangerous mindset.
yeah, for me, it was when you asked about that transition to significance, right? What I realized is like success, it just kept breeding more success and more success. And it was like I woke up, you close a month out, you feel like a hero. The next month you start, you're a zero, right? And it's like, how do I duplicate that process? And I just didn't have anything for myself, right? I was chasing a lot of relief in my life versus restoration. And I started to slow down, had a lot of wise counsel in my life. People started speaking clearly into me. And I was like, wait a minute, I can have success or I can have significance. And out of significance, I'll actually have more success, but I'll have so many other things like joy, peace, hope, fulfillment. I'll have an actual marriage that actually is thriving versus one that's not, right? And I'll be able to show up for people and not just be there, but be emotionally available to them.
Yeah. Well, so one part of your journey was, an opportunity at one company ended and it created an opportunity to really take some time to be intentional about what you wanted to do next. And I mean, 60 days. You
Yeah.
waited. And what I love about you, Michael, is you're very, you're strong in faith. You prayed over it. You
Yeah.
were, listening to what God was telling you to do and really following that voice. I mean, what did you learn in that period of time to kind of set you up for what you're doing now?
Yeah. I had a journal every single day I wrote in it. And actually outside of mortgage, I lead a men's ministry and it's True North Ministries. And so a lot of that helped me throughout the years. But what I learned when I was sitting there is I'm a person that like normally when I transition from a company to a company, it's like that, right? But when that decision was made and we parted ways, and I'll be honest, I was let go from that company, Connor, right? And that took a lot for me as a top performer to realize. And it wasn't anything that was negligent or that type of stuff. It was just a difference of views. But when I thought of that, I was like, wait a minute, man, I've been through a financial bankruptcy. I've lost everything in my life. And I really tell people, like, I used to live my life with my hands closed really tight. Like, what's mine? What did I get? What did I make? And this time my hands were open, right? And I'm like, Lord, just whatever it is, like, I'm willing to be obedient in this calling that you have on my life. And I heard this small voice, right? And I won't say it's audible, but I heard it in my soul. And I just heard, be still. And I'm like, okay. So, like, after about 3 days, I'm like, I've been still, I've been still. Can I move? And it was still, be still, right? Be still. And so that's what I did. I sit there and I journaled every single day. And I thought about, like, okay, moving towards significance, it doesn't really begin with me, right? It begins with what is the calling on my life. And so I started to sit still. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, God kind of started to move me and said, okay, start talking to people. And I'm like, okay, companies? And he's like, no, people. And so I started calling my referral partners. I started calling my friends. I started calling my mentors. And I really had to humble myself and say, this is where I'm at, but I need your eyes. I need your ears. I need your emotions, right? is there anything that you could speak into me at this moment? And people started to do that. But I took that time, 60 days, man. After about 3 weeks, 21 days, the Lord started speaking to me and he's like, all right, we can get started now. And I'm like, sweet. But even then, it took another 29 days to make a decision. And that's why I landed where I am today. I'm at Great Plains Bank Home Lending. And it was one of those things where it just fit all the right pieces, and not the producer, not the one that could go out and grow into $100 million in production. It fit the right person. That was me, right? The one that God created me to be versus what the world had created me to be, right? And I tell people all the time, right? Like, leadership isn't this thing that you do, right? It's actually who you are, right? And so I started to step boldly into more leadership and more calling on my life. And yeah, man, but 60 days of sitting still, it was a long time, but it was so fruitful.
Man,
And even when I look, yeah,
I would go crazy. So you talk a lot about significance. What is that like? What does significance mean to you? How do you define it? And why do you feel that a lot of originators confuse success with significance? And what are they getting wrong?
yeah. So, it's wild, man. In my position, I sit back from this chair that I'm in, and even from the chair that I was in as an originator. But if I define significance, it's this, right? It's my ability to walk into any situation and not have an agenda and humble myself before that other person and figure out, how can I serve you before I lead you? Right? Because the greatest servant that ever walked this earth was Jesus, right? And he didn't walk into something having an agenda, right? He walked into it knowing that this person needs something and I need to figure out what it is so I can give that to him. But Connor, I saw in my own marriage, right? I saw like I didn't have the emotional connection to give, right? Because I wasn't being fulfilled in a way. Success isn't something that fulfills you, right? It's a start and it's a stop, and then it's a start and it's a stop. But what I realized is when I looked at originators, right, I saw people that were working 55, 60 hours a week. I saw people that couldn't show up for football games. I saw people that didn't have date nights. And I thought, man, I've been through that before. And what God really told me was, he said, look, you can go out and do 100 million in production. Like, I knew I could do it. I had it in me. I had process. I had system. Or he said, you can go help serve other people and help them figure out to live a life of significance. And I was like, man, it's a lot to ask, but I knew that if he was going to bless it, that it would become fruitful.
Yeah. And so with that calling, you've built the five collective around two ideas, five rituals and 5 points of sale. And before we go deep, like, how would you describe the five collective to someone who's never heard of it? And which side of it do loan officers tend to ignore the most?
Yeah, such a great question. So for me, the five collective is this. It's literally the overarching umbrella that protects the person and the producer, right? Because a lot of things that we do in this industry, it's like, hey, here's this to grow your production. And here's this one thing that can help you build relationships with referral partners. And then here's this, and then here's this. But there's not a lot of things that help protect the person that can handle the weight that mortgage puts on top of them. And so I would say it's like the rebar in concrete. It really is, right? Because if you take the rebar out and you try to build something, and then you start to build something on top of that concrete, it will not hold, right? It may hold for a while, but eventually as storms come and as things come in and start to hit that, it's going to break down, right? And then there's nothing left, right? And so for me, the five collective is just that. It's really the overarching umbrella that protects the person as much as it protects the producer. And then your second question was, which one do people miss out on the most? By far, it is the five rituals, right? Because they're so focused on production, they miss, who do I need to become in order to hold and carry the weight of that production?
Yeah. So what does that look like day to day? I mean, why does a loan officer need to work on themselves before they can carry that load?
Yeah. Well, I think if I had to look at myself early in my career, that question was answered every single day, right? It was coming home and feeling exhausted. It was chasing, like, just, okay, I have this new process in place, it's built, but why do I still feel this way at the end of the month? Why do I still feel this way when I walk into my house? Right? Those types of questions. And so when I look at the five rituals, it's not anything difficult. Like, if you think of it, if you back into Sunday, right? And you look at a Sunday, it's your Sunday night ritual, right? You look at like, what did you win at last week? And then is your week ahead prepared, right? In a way that actually holds on to what's important to you, right? And then for me, I wake up at about 5:15 every morning to get ready for the gym. And there's a morning ritual in that, right? Like literally, that means that every single morning I wake up, I have a ritual in place that I do, right? Read stuff that actually is business focused. It's more on how can I become better, right? And since I'm a faith filled guy, man, I do what's
Mhm.
called the pause app every single morning. And it's just taking time and pausing in a moment to make sure that I'm filled in order to walk into a place that I feel others. And then, there's
Love
obviously
that,
three
man.
more because there's five, and I don't have to go in deep detail in them, but man, I would say by far people miss out on that. And I always tell people, like, if we just focus and help you become the best producer there is, we miss the mark because we need to focus on you, the human, like who you've been created to become. And then once we do that, that sustains the production. If you focus on production first, man, when a production comes, it's going to crumble the person.
Yeah. And so you're not just like teaching this, you're actually, practicing what you preach. You took a loan not too long ago and ran your own, like, 5 points of sale through it and ran the beta test. And tell us how that went. Like, what was that experience like, kind of putting your own coaching to practice?
Yeah. So here's the crazy part. It's been almost 6 years since I've done that. And I was sitting there and I was thinking through, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes sitting on this side, I know as a mortgage originator and sitting in those shoes, like in people helping and mentoring and coaching along the way, it's like if they finish a sentence and they can say, that's good for you, Decker, right? I wanted to make sure that that sentence couldn't be finished that way, right? Good for you, Decker. So I was like, hey, it's time to put it to work. So I got a family. I didn't even know this person. And to be honest, it was in Texas in a market I'm not known, right? I didn't know the agents. I didn't know the family. And so reached out to them and literally ran the 5 points of sell from start to finish. And by the time we were finished with that, I learned a lot about myself of holy smokes, I did 60 million. And there's a lot of pieces within the 5 points of sell that I didn't do as a producer. And if I did it, I can only imagine what was possible because it's such good infrastructure to build upon. And so I was pretty blown away by it. And I actually have text messages from the referral partners, right? Both on the buy side and the list side of literally telling me it was one of the best experiences that they had. And I wouldn't say it's all because of me, right? There's a small percentage of it, but it's really truly based upon running the 5 points of sell. And the family was totally stoked as well. So I'm pretty stoked to be able to do it. And it got those juices flowing again. And I
Yeah.
got to understand what it's like, right? I had someone, they price shot me, right? But I was able to overcome that based upon understanding how you do the true rate lock conversation.
Yeah. And so you're actually being challenged by your coach to launch a 30-minute leadership kind of webinar once a week for 12 months, inviting a guest on with you. And that's a big commitment.
Yeah.
What made you say yes to that? And what do you hope loan officers walk away from? And how can we find information on that?
Yeah, so we are like, I would say 95% ready to launch that. And it's actually going to be called the Unfiltered Leader, right? And we're actually going to take a Proverbs every single week and we're going to open it up and we're going to roll into it and talk about that Proverbs. But it's not like a biblical like teaching. It's like, how can we use this as leaders, And it all came out of this, right? So as my coach is like, hey, I think you have a lot more to give to the community than what you're giving. And I'm like, tell me more. And it's a mirror, right? And anytime mirror gives you a task to do, it's always like this really big one. And I'm like, once a week? And he's like, yeah. He's like, what happens when in the first week, the second week, the third week, no one shows up, right? Do you continue to do it for 12 full months? And I thought through that and I thought, well, I can do that. It's not difficult. It's not hard. Now, the first step is always the hardest, right? And so we'll be launching that really soon. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. And so if you're watching this, you're more than welcome to follow me. But this is what it's going to look like. It's 30 minutes. So 5 minutes rolling in, right? 20 minutes of conversation, and then 5 minutes rolling out. And it'll be called the Unfiltered Leader.
Love that, man. We'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because you are involved in the coaching communities and you help so many originators sort of find their way. What do you think is some of the worst advice that the mortgage industry gives? And what's sort of counter to that advice, in your opinion?
Yeah. This is when I would tell everybody that's watching this to put your seatbelt on and buckle up, right? Because here's the deal. I would say the worst advice that is given, hands down, without a doubt, is just get more leads. Just get more leads, right? Leads solve everything, right? And when I think through that, and I remember myself as an originator, my conversion rate from lead to funding that family was 37 to 38% on an annual basis, right? And last year, our statistics within our company, we were at 35%, meaning that every family we spoke to that was a lead, we closed three and a half of those. And so when I look at that and I say, yeah, leads are a good resource. But Connor, if you get 100 leads and you close 10% of them, and I get 50 leads and I close 30% of them, who wins?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's not about the leads, it's about the conversion of the lead, right? And some people on this may be like, yeah, but I get really poor leads. Well, then you better be having a conversation with the people that refer those because they're fishing out of the wrong resources, right? And so for me, the worst advice that I hear in this industry is, hey, leads solve everything. And that's not the truth. Process, system solve problems. Typically, people cause those problems, right? And leads aren't something that, if you don't have a defined process, if you don't have the 5 points of sale that you're working from, your initial lead consultation to your loan consultation, to your rate lock, to your post closing consultation in your annual mortgage review, if you don't have that set in place, then I promise you, you're going to chase lead after lead after lead, and you're going to have no loyalty from those leads when you close them and actually have opportunities with them in the future.
Right. Having systems, processes that mitigates just having to be lucky all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like a 10% conversion rate to me sounds like somebody who just gets lucky every once in a while, kind of a blind squirrel finding a nut. And, instead of having that process in place to convert at a much higher level and really just keep you sane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in coaching, accountability comes up as kind of a cornerstone of that. And you've noticed there's a difference between those that receive accountability and those that embrace it. You said that those are two very different things. So what does embracing accountability look like? And why are so many producers really afraid to go that far?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be super transparent. In my career, I've been pretty good at receiving accountability, right? And what that looks like is, Connor, you're like, hey, Decker, here's the things you need to take care of, and here's what you've made commitments to. And I'm like, yeah, man, I got that. But I walk away from the call and I'm like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like, you're some coach sitting in this ivory tower talking to me about things. And when's the last time you had a conversation with the family that said, hey, I have a half a rate better, and I think I'm maybe moving that direction? Or you have a referral partner that's like, hey, man, I really enjoy what you're doing, but someone is going to come and partner with me in cost share and lead generation. Remember earlier our conversation about leads? So, like, that's receiving accountability, right? But embracing accountability is this, and this is as easy as I can say it, right? It's your ability to pick the mirror up and realize that whoever's on the other side, reflection back, that's the person that has to own it, right? That's the person that has to said, I made these commitments to myself, not the coach, not the mentor, not the executive leader, but I made them to myself. And I have to embrace the fact that, did I or didn't I, right? And a lot of times when I'm on coaching calls with my team and that type of stuff, and let's say we have homework that's due, I'm not going to be a hard ass. You either want to do it or you don't want to do it, right? But I do have a rule. If you show up and don't do homework more than 2 times, you're out of the group, right? Because it's not making commitments to me, it's making commitments to yourself. And Connor, when people don't follow through with commitments to themselves, that's a really hard life to live, right? Because if they're not honoring the commitment to themselves, I can only imagine, right, who they're not honoring those commitments to. And so that's what embracing accountability looks like. It's actually being able to go, wait a minute, I need to check myself and realize that I have something to own. And it's not the company, it's not my spouse, it's not my teammates. Like, it's me.
I love that, man. So I've asked you a lot, Michael, and I want to give you an opportunity to just, have an open floor and share anything that maybe I didn't ask or anything that you might feel is important for the audience listening today to hear that would be valuable to them.
And thanks a lot, Connor. Well, hey, first and foremost, man, so cool to hang out with you again. Like you said, dude, we straight up just got together about 9 or 10 years ago, and it's crazy how fast that goes by, right? But if there's something I could convey to the community is this, right? Like, you have to have someone in your life that you can have conversations with that happen in between here, right? If you don't have that person that you can't be honest, open, and transparent with about not only the frustrations of what it is working in this industry, man, this is the weight that I'm carrying in my life. This is what I'm struggling with. These are the things that I'm faced on any given moment. Like, if you don't have that in your life, man, I would encourage you, first and foremost, you got to have that person. Right. And then if you are an origination and the average producer that I've seen you bring on this call is, $20+ million a year, man, I know the pressure, right? To hit those numbers each and every month. And it's not because someone's asking you to do it. It's because it's in you to do. But the question I would ask yourself is, do I have something built in my life that can hold the weight and responsibility of what I want to achieve? Because if you're just out there doing production and you're not actually finding restoration for yourself, then man, you're going to chase a lot of relief, and relief is fleeting. So make sure you have that in your life. And then the last thing I would say, man, I'm a faith-filled guy, right? So man, the greatest person that you could ever learn from in this world was Jesus Christ, right? And he has
Amen.
so many principles that if you just took a moment and cracked open that book that's probably sitting on a shelf and you haven't been in it in a really long time, there's a lot of good things in there. And if you're looking for a place to connect, our brand new unfiltered leader, like, we're literally going to break down Proverbs, and it is going to help the leader that maybe has been pushed into leadership. And the world said, you're good at all these things, but in the back of your mind, you're like, man, if I ever get exposed, there's a lot to lose. And so it's going to be a way for us to really look at, what does it mean to be an unfiltered leader? So I appreciate it, man. Thanks for letting me be on this. I hope that people
Absolutely.
picked up something from it.
Awesome. Well, Michael Decker, thank you for being on the lowdown. It's been awesome just hearing your story and everything that you've had to share. Certainly will be cheering for you on the sideline, and wish you nothing but the best in the future. And, hopefully we can help you out with the unfiltered leader as well.
Go.
And yeah. And so I appreciate you being on, man.
Thanks a lot, my man.